Okay, it's been a few days since I actually recorded anything, but we've been doing a bunch of little projects once again, getting things knocked off the list. First thing, finished up the fuel system, so I guess to buy the engine, I'll just show you how the line runs up here. So we got the, obviously tank in the back, flexible braided lines that run to the pump, or the filter and regulator. Then out of the filter and regulator, there's another flexible line that goes into hardline. Hardline comes all the way up here, goes into a braided line, which then goes into the back of the fuel rail right there. So the stock, well, the hardline's technically a stock line because it's bent to the shape of what the stock line was. And then back here, as you can see, that filter and regulator up there, we got those flexible lines that come out of the tank, and then the hard line is just right here. We also got the breather / roller valve mounted up there. Found a spot, made a little bracket, got all that put in place. Pretty happy with it. Also doing new e-brake cables and new brake shoes and drums as well, just because, you know, you needed it. Probably a good thing to have. And in the trunk here, I started working on the battery hold down. So I went ahead, took the battery tray I had up front. I'm gonna end up mounting that back here. I think it'll look nice and it'll actually hold the battery and add some more structure because this floor is so extremely thin. So that's down there. I still gotta drill a small hole in each corner. I'm gonna go ahead and plug weld it to the floor. I think that'll be better than bolting it down so you don't have to deal with nuts and bolts and washers and everything. I got a hole on this side, a hole on that side, put a piece of thread rod on both sides, plate over the top of battery, and then once the thread rod's through the floor, put a plate up underneath it. And I think between all that, should be able to hold it. One thing I did have to do is, obviously you can see this seam right here. So in order to put that plate on the bottom, I just had to cut a little slot in the seam, and then I just went ahead and welded it up underneath there. Go ahead and show what that looks like as well. There we go. Yeah, there's a little part I had to notch out, and I went ahead and just welded it up. I'll probably toss some seam sealer over that just to be careful, because like I said, this floor is extremely thin, and the last thing I need is for that to start splitting apart there. And another big piece / important project I'm starting to work on here is the fan. So at first I had that electric fan and shroud that I got from the junkyard from, I think it was, 97 Thunderbird, which I thought was gonna work perfectly until got the radiator in there with the engine mocked up, and it wasn't gonna work. I think it was like 5.5 inches thick, and I had 2.5 inches between the fins here and the front snout of the pulley. So I didn't have many options. I went ahead and measured the distance of the thinner pulley. I forget what it is. I think it's from I guess I can't remember. Whatever vets came with LS3s, those water pumps have a thinner pulley on them. But it doesn't really matter because the distance from the front snout to the face of the block here is the same. Even though they just have a thinner pulley, the water pump itself isn't actually thinner. It still works with the truck balancer down here. So I opted just to keep this one. I might have to go to that water pump anyway, just because it has the snout for the radiator hose on this side. But since I got these super thin fans, I might be able to snake the hose under here, across, and up. I'm just not totally sure if it's gonna rub against the pulley or whatnot, but I'm gonna try my best to make this one work, as I've already bought 2 water pumps now. And yeah, it turns out water pumps are cheap. That's why I kind of hold it off on buying that Corvette one. But fans, dealio here. So these are a little over 2 inches. I think they're 2.25 thick. So I gotta have them sucked up right against the fins here. That's gonna be a little bit tricky, but it's the only way it's gonna be able to work there. I have to go with 2. These each flow, I think, 950 CFM. So I'm hoping between the both of these, that's what is quick math here, 1900 CFM between the 2 of them. Hope that's enough for this thing. It should be. I mean, worst comes to worst, if I really have to add a third fan, I can put a pusher on the back. I got enough space, but I'm pretty sure these 2 will be a-okay. So I got the fans trimmed on an angle here. Didn't have to cut off too much on each side, and then I went ahead and notched. There's like this little, I don't know, molded in block on the side. I notched that, so now that can slide underneath. And then we got the holes lined up there. Slide this guy under, just like so. Plenty of space right there. Fits nice and tight, all looks good. This side fits good. And the next thing I started working on was how I'm gonna get the sheet of aluminum to basically go over and bolt on. So these are what the tabs look like that they come with. Little pieces like so. There's a good representation. But there you can see how much higher the tab is than this side piece for the shroud. So what I had to do was trim them down quite a bit. So you can see that's what I gotta make the next, where we have 7 tabs look like. And all I did was just trim out that middle piece. I was trying to save as much as I could of it, but it just wasn't working. So I just said, screw it, cut that middle part out and then trimmed it all the way down. So now that'll slide in there like so. It's still a little bit loose, not too bad. So once I get it all squared away and where I want it, I'll go ahead and I think it just epoxy it in place and that should hold it no problem. But yeah, with this on the top of the washer there, we put it on top of there, we got it level all the way across. So I just got to measure and duplicate this 7 more times and we should be all good. It took me a few days to cut all this out and make it all work, but the shroud and fans here are all done. I had it in the car last night, probably should have took a video of that, but I just took it out right now because I'm going to go ahead and paint this piece. So originally I was going to try to do this out of some extra sheets of carbon I had, but they were curved and I couldn't get them flat enough even with heating them up and trying to bend them. So I went ahead, just got some aluminum. It was tricky to cut out the shapes for the fans here, but I got them all to fit. It was cool. This radiator actually had these tabs on the side here with threads in them, so I just got the matching bolts. That got my sides mounted, and then for the fans, all I did, let's see here. So these fans have little tabs here. Those are the ones I had to cut down. I didn't glue this one on. Well, oh no, this one actually popped off. And then all I did was obviously just drill a hole through the aluminum. That'll mount up there, clears the fins, and then since I had to trim a bunch of stuff off the sides, I went ahead and I'm just gonna do some quick little body work on the side of the fans to smooth it all out. So now that I know it fits, I got plenty of clearance. I think I actually have about a 1/2 inch of clearance from the outer ring of the fan here to the front snout on the pulley, so I got plenty of space now. Now that this is all done, I'm gonna go ahead and paint this. I'm gonna do it black, repaint these fans, and then reassemble it and toss it in the car. Fans and fan shroud are all complete now. So I went ahead and painted that shroud just like a satin black, did the fans gloss. Gives it a small little contrast. You honestly can't even really tell, but I think it looks cool in there. With the stainless bolts and whatnot, I don't know, I like little stuff like that. Just kind of got the harness or the wires laying in here, but I'm thinking we'll run them both off to the driver's side here. At least that's where I got them angled at for right now. We'll figure that out when the time comes though. That shouldn't be too bad. The only thing I ended up having to do was notch the bottom part of the shroud here. Just kind of put a notch in it there for the hose in order for it to slip over. And I actually might get lucky, and I think the slant 6 hose, the lower radiator hose, will actually work from this port here all the way to the one on the bottom. Still got to figure out what I'm gonna do for a top one, but I got a lot more space than I thought for a 90 in here and up here. So I don't think I'm gonna have to switch to a C5 water pump, which just has the upper snout on this side. That would be a little bit easier, but now that I got a lot of space, I think we'll be able to work with that. Also got the steering box installed. This is a new 16-to-1 box. I'm pretty pumped for it to be able to actually drive with this. The old box was kind of sketchy and not the best, although we put a new worm gear in it and I mean, quote unquote, rebuilt it. Essentially, it was still 50 years old and it was not that great. So hopefully this here, between this and the all new front suspension, should fix the whole steering issue. I'm excited for that. The only downside is the manifolds I got. Oh, they're on the other side of the garage, but the manifolds I got are not going to work. The back part is actually hitting, I guess, this big kind of, I don't really know what you call this, like the ring on the back here that spins on and off. It's hitting that, so it's not like I could even trim it. And I mean, it's pretty much level with the casing anyway. So I got a couple options slash ideas of what to do for exhaust, but we're gonna go ahead and maybe save that for another time depending on what I do. Other than that, while I've been working on all these fab projects and what's not, my dad went ahead and has been working on all the brake lines throughout the past week. This stuff definitely takes time, but is 100% worth it. You can see those things look sweet in there. So opted to do all new stainless lines throughout the entirety of the car. I think that's the way to go. It's gonna look much nicer, and obviously it won't rust this way. So got a line lock down on the firewall back there. And before, we had the distribution block next to the proportioning valve up here, kind of on the inner fender, but went ahead and moved the distribution block down to the factory location, and then just made some little brackets to push the proportioning valve off the inner fender, because it was a little lower beforehand. So I think that'll be a clean little setup. We're gonna go ahead, I think, put the clutch reservoir somewhere in this area. It's just kind of hard to figure out the angle for the hose right here, so somewhere in this area. We'll figure that out though, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, the brake lines on this thing look sweet. All nice and tight bends. Got the back ones in here, so I'm really happy with how that looks. That just, oh man, that looks so nice. One more quick thing here I got going is that I'm starting to make a skid plate for the car, because the oil pan hangs, what is it, 1/4 inch lower below the bottom lip of the K-member, and the last thing I need is for the oil pan to bottom out. So I'm kind of going maybe a little aggressive here, but I think it'll be well worth it. Just got some 1/8 inch here, making a quick little skid plate. A while ago I went ahead and actually welded nuts up on the inside of the K-member before I boxed it. So then I got these bolts here. I'll make some little tabs. It'll go off this side like so. We'll put the bolts in. But yeah, just knocking projects out kind of one thing at a time here. I'm happy with how it's all coming together. Since I suck at this stuff, I haven't filmed anything in probably 2 weeks, and I haven't got a video up in probably almost a month now. But that doesn't mean we haven't been working on it. I just forget to film half the time. Plus, you know, once you get going and whatnot, it's kind of an inconvenience. Whatever. A lot of updates here. I guess we could start off with what's going on in the engine bay. Brake lines are all done now. Just needed to do that one brake line that went across there. So that is all complete. I ended up having to move this goofy little tab up because it was kind of down here. And turns out it was only held on by seam sealer from the backside. So once the line was clipped in and we went to take the line off and pop the clip off, so I had to make a patch on the firewall, weld it in. That was not the most exciting thing, but then I got to mount my catch can a little bit higher, which I wanted to do anyway because I didn't like how it was before. So that is all complete. I'm happy with how that turned out. I got the dipstick mounted, just kind of little stuff like this. This is actually a pretty nice one. It's a flexible and a locking one. And I'm kind of not too happy about it, but you'll never even notice. I mean, it runs through the motor mount there because the GTO oil pan has the hole for the dipstick on the front. Still got to figure out how I'm going to plug the hole on the block. I've seen some guys drill and tap it, but because of this little space, I really don't know if we're gonna be able to get a drill in there, let alone tap it. So I've also seen some guys just hammer like a check ball in there or a wedge. Still got to figure that out. Intake, I was just gonna run a 90 with the filter here, but I didn't really like how it looks. So I got a 45, gonna do an angle down like that. I think that'll look super clean. That'll be nice, it'll give me plenty of space. For the tensioner here, we got clearance there. That'll give me space to run the radiator hose up here. What else have we got done? Oh yeah, the alternator. So on the back of these alternators, there's a stud where the wire connects onto for ground. And it was hitting the back, or the front of my motor mount down here, so the alternator couldn't slide as far back as we needed it to. So I ended up trimming that stud out. I cut a notch in this like plastic housing here, like the back piece of it, so then I could still slide the wire over it with the boot. So I'm pretty happy how that turned out. I still gotta go ahead and make some spacers to get this guy fully aligned. But once I get this aligned, then I can get a serpentine belt for it. So that'll all be done. Then I think I'm gonna go ahead and move on to radiator hoses. I still gotta plumb the steam port here, but I don't really like how this crossover is because I don't really want to loop like that because I'm going to go into the water pump. So I'm going to try to find one that maybe shoots straight out or has like a 90 or something. Not really a huge deal, but I would like that to look a little bit better for sure. Oh yeah, I got a washer fluid tank, mounted that here, made a little bracket. I think that'll look clean. I really didn't want to put one of these in here, let alone put it in a stock spot, which the stock one, there's like a big box right here. I think that looked kind of ugly. And originally I had this one mounted right here, but that's where the clutch reservoir is gonna go. So that'll just mount up like so. And the cool thing about this is I can run the hose here with the headlight harness, kind of tuck it up in there, run it alongside it, and I think that'll look pretty clean. That was a lot of talking, but I wanted to get most of that done and out of the way. A couple other things I actually did was I went ahead, made a new splitter and a new mount for it, just because I wasn't too happy, was never happy with how the old one was. This one, I got a little bit more angle, it's tucked up a little more, and I actually went ahead and used, let's see if I can get under here, show you guys. I used wing nuts on the end pieces here, because originally I just had these 4 quick pins so I can take it on and off, but with that being, it was kind of floppy and it wasn't solid, so I went ahead and put these wing nuts so you can tighten it down. Really secure now, rigid, I'm happy with it. I also got the skid plate here painted, all finished up. I'm happy with how that turned out. It's pretty low profile too, so even though this car is going to be low, I don't think that'll catch on much. I'm sure speed bump or a rock or something will obviously definitely hit it, but I don't think that's too crazy low. It's definitely not lower than the splitter or the trans mount. Actually, yeah, I think this is actually a little bit lower than the trans mount back there, but this is not lower than the splitter. Speaking of the trans mount, let's see if I slide back here. We got the new throwout bearing in place. I've been waiting on that for a while. So the trans is fully bolted in now, complete. Got the trans mount all painted, situated in there. And the only reason I was kind of holding off on doing that is I was waiting for a figure out a solution for a speedo gear and a speedo cable. I got it all figured out, and it was ended up going to be like, I think like $250 for the little gear and for an adapter to run a mechanical cable to it, because it has an electronic speedo on it right now. And I was like, I really don't want to spend that much money on a trans that I don't really plan on keeping forever. So I was like, I'm just gonna, I guess, run without a speedo for now. That'll be the one thing that technically, I guess, isn't complete with this car, but I think it'll be worth it. I think it's a smart move, because hopefully sometime later this year I can get my TKX. Other things with the trans here, got the shifter all completed. I never really liked the billet one that the shifter handle completed, I should say. I never liked the billet one that the base came with. So I went ahead, got some rod, drilled holes in it, put a thread rod through it so it has some weight to it at least, and that way I can screw in a shifter ball on the top here. Welded that in place, turned out pretty decent, capped off the bottom, and it's all complete here, so that's pretty exciting. Other than that, I think that's all the progress. I don't know, little things, like I got my IX sensor there and TPS sensor, just other little things like the crossover line for the fuel rails there, starting to get everything plumbed, got the trans vent mounted and whatnot. So yeah, still gotta figure out what I'm gonna do for exhaust, because with this new steering box in here, these manifolds hit, and there's not a whole lot of space. I was extremely close to just saying screw it and getting a turbo and putting it right here. That way the exhaust would come up. I was gonna use different manifolds anyway, but I kind of want to get this on the road, and I really don't know if the cam in this engine would be good for a turbo or whatnot. Plus I would have to have a crossover piece come down there. It was gonna add about probably another month's work, let alone at least around $1,000 if more. So I think it was a good call. That'll be down the road, like I said. But right now, the two major things amongst all the other little things we're pretty much left with now. Wiring, that's gonna be a little bit tricky, and exhaust, that's gonna be tricky basically because there's no space up front here, and trying to get the exhaust back underneath the torsion bar cross member with the car being so low is gonna be tricky. So I don't know, I got round pipe. I might end up going oval. It's more expensive, and it's gonna be harder getting transitions from round to oval, from the manifolds into the boom tubes in the back. So we'll see what the actual height looks like. But yeah, the wiring, that's gonna be pretty tricky. Just trying to figure out exactly how we're gonna run it, what we're gonna do, because I wanna make it as clean and simple as possible. Another tricky thing is going to be where to mount the ECU, because up on the firewall in here underneath the dash, there's not a whole lot of space. I could mount it in the glove box, but I kind of like having a glove box, obviously because I can drive this car. So what I'm kind of thinking is maybe make a bracket off the dash that kind of goes back, tucks up above the heater, maybe mount the ECU there. Then I can get rid of these gauges because they'll have the little touch screen, but I really don't want it just like sitting here. So maybe we'll make a bracket for it to kind of like slide onto, and then I can just pop it off and like tuck it up underneath the dash or something, like when it's parked or whatnot. Because the main harness, we're gonna drill a hole through right here, and it's gonna come out through the center of the firewall. That way it's not super obvious, it'll be hidden behind the intake and whatnot. And then most of the wiring is actually going to be run, I think we were talking about the passenger side, because the battery is on the passenger side, because I made that mount for the back. Oh yeah, which is all finished up. I guess I could show that as well. And I am rambling on forever, as per usual. So yeah, that's the battery mount for the back. Battery's obviously not in it because it's in the Bonneville right now, but that'll just go on there like so. We'll run the cables along the passenger side all the way up to the front. So there is still a lot to get done, and I talked way too much there, but I was trying to cram everything that we pretty much got done in the past month in there. Goal / hope right now is maybe a month and a half, 2 months, get this thing back on the road. I mean, basically once we get the engine wired up, and still got to make a pre-oiler system for it, could fire it up, make sure that works, make sure the trans actually goes to the gears. Once that's situated, then I can go ahead and get a drive shaft and start figuring out how to wire up this engine to the car itself. So still ways to go, but we're getting there, and pretty excited as of right now.